This week on Technicolor Blood, Tom Hardy makes his feelings on the new Venom movie felt, and we will take a deep dive into Bradley Cooper's career.
Ben Affleck has an official statement, and Chris Evans has an unofficial statement.
All that and much more right now on Technicolor Blood. Technicolor Blood, welcome back. Glad you guys are joining us once again this week. My name's Chris. As always, I'm here joined by Terrence. How you doing, Terrence?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody out there?
I'm waiting for them to answer.
Well, they sound like they're doing pretty well.
Actually, for an October, there's a lot of interesting movies coming out this month. Venom is coming up soon. Of course, A Star is Born is coming up. We also have First Man coming. I can't remember the last time there were theatrical releases in sort of an off month like October that I've been this excited to see.
Yeah, it's a pretty stacked month. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, and we're going to discuss a couple of those movies at least as we go forward here. So to start off, though, Tom Hardy, maybe this is a red flag, is out there saying that apparently the 30 or 40 minutes of that film that are his favorite for Venom, which is being released this weekend, did not make it to the final cut of the movie, and that's probably not a good sign. I'd also seen something where he's sort of, I think he's trying to be a team player. He's always been pretty good about doing press and just kind of going along for the ride and doing the thing that actors are supposed to do. But I've also seen another article somewhere where he just kind of basically put out there that it wasn't the film that he signed on for.
Ooh.
And I don't know if that's more related to the whole, like, you know, is it going to be rated R? Is it going to be PG-13 and all that, which, like we talked about previously, seems kind of ridiculous because pretty much every comic book movie is rated R except for Deadpool. So who knows if they pitch something
rated PG-13.
Yeah, I'm sorry, right. So I don't know if there's something to that or if he just had an executive who told him what he wanted to hear at the time, but it's not a good sign for Venom, and the movie doesn't look great either.
So do you know if when he's referring to the 30 or 40 minutes that were cut out, is he talking about what was cut specifically to go from an R rating to a PG-13 rating?
He did not specify that. Now, I wonder if maybe he was putting it out there to have people, you know, lead them down the path of that, since that's been some of the talk, but he did not specify.
Man, no matter what, it's bad timing for that kind of a statement.
Yeah, bad timing for the statement right before the movie's released. Yeah. I mean, presumably he's all over the talk shows this week, I assume.
I would assume, absolutely, yeah.
So I guess he can probably count on, you know, Jimmy Fallon not asking him about that and making it weird. You know, that guy just goes after the hard-hitting questions all the time. But
maybe it was just a joke that fell flat, you know. Maybe he was actually making a crack referring to the, you know, conversation on the internet about it going from an R rating to a PG-13 rating.
That would also be a very odd choice to make if that was the case.
Yeah, that is true.
Regardless of that, I'm still excited to see it because it's Tom Hardy, and, you know, I don't really have any knowledge of the Venom comics or anything, but, you know, comic book movie, I'm gonna see it.
Yeah, I'm always stoked when they're able to get an actor that I'm a big fan of his acting into a superhero movie. You know, I mean, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and for those of you out there who are a fan, you know, the other 2 or 3 people out there that are fans of his FX series, Tom Hardy's FX series Taboo, that officially is going to have a second season, and I didn't even bother asking you because I know you haven't seen it, and a lot of other people haven't either, but apparently it did well enough / they wanted to continue to work with Tom Hardy enough that the second season is going to happen. And the interesting bit about that is that he co-wrote the show with his father. So it's kind of a weird working arrangement, but
yeah, he's a busy guy.
He's a very busy guy. All right, so this is just sort of an out of nowhere little piece of news we probably won't spend a whole lot of time on, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. David Cronenberg has put it out there that he was offered a chance to direct Return of the Jedi way back in 1982, 83.
Whoa, I've never heard that.
Yeah, me either. And what a dramatically different movie that would have been.
Yeah, that is interesting to think about. You know, famously, David Lynch was offered the role of directing Return of the Jedi as well. So that's 2 directors who nothing they had made up to that point would suggest that they would be a good choice to direct the Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it seems like at some point some executives had a far, far different idea for how that movie was going to play out than it actually played
No
out.
kidding. Well, I mean, when you consider kind of how just white bread generic that third installment ended up being, I mean, you can't help but imagine that one of those two directors, especially Cronenberg, would have really turned it into something truly unique.
And just for those of you out there that aren't familiar with David Cronenberg's work, I'm not sure. I think probably all of you are familiar with David Lynch, so I'm not sure which side of that scale he sort of falls into. If he's weirder than Lynch, he's probably weirder. And his movies are probably a little bit more coherent, I would say.
Yeah.
So for those of you who aren't real familiar, he directed Scanners in the 80s and Videodrome. He did the remake of The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. Dead Ringers was another big one of his. Naked Lunch. He did Crash, not the Crash that won the Oscar, that terrible, awful movie that I hated, but the Crash from the 80s. Or I'm sorry, the 90s, that starred James Spader, which was literally about people who get into car accidents and have sex.
That is
and
correct.
I'm not making that up.
No.
So put your brain in the director of the guy who directed a movie about crashing cars and having sex in the wreckage into Return of the Jedi. Like, I have disturbing images on what the Sarlacc pit would have looked like and what Jabba the Hutt would have done.
And what the Ewoks would have been up to.
Oh, God. Yeah, he also did Existenz. That's another big one from sort of his later part of his career. And I think in the last several years, his two biggest, I don't know about critical acclaim, but his two biggest, more recent movies were Eastern Promises and A History of Violence.
And
Both Viggo
Eastern
Mortensen.
Promises is, I think, a pretty excellent movie.
Yeah, Eastern Promises is the last time I remember seeing a Cronenberg movie that I really liked.
Yeah.
He hadn't done a ton since then, but I actually thought that was a pretty good movie. So I just thought that was kind of a fun thing to toss out there because, I mean, in the history of Hollywood, there's several choices that are made, casting choices, directing choices, all sorts of different choices that send the whole industry, well, not the whole industry, but, movies we know and love into a completely different direction. And I'm just so curious about what that would have looked like.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting that both he and Lynch were up for that role or up for that job because those are both directors that, as we've said before, you're either on their wavelength or you're not.
Yeah.
You're either going to like their stuff and, be really curious to see more of it, or all you need to do is see one to know that this is not a guy for you.
Yeah. I wouldn't really... I'm not a massive Cronenberg fan by any stretch, and I wouldn't say that A History of Violence or Eastern Promises are good entries into his filmography. He's more known for much weirder stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't know, but I know that there's cult classics like Scanners and Naked Lunch and a couple of others back then are more his speed as far as what he's actually known for. So if you want to roll the dice and give it a shot out there, go for it and hit us up and let us know what you think of that. All right, so this week in Men Allegedly Behaving Badly, we seem to hit this every single week.
Yeah, it is that time.
So Nicolas Cage having a little bit of renewed success with the Mandy film that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just going to throw allegedly all over this because I have no idea if this is true or not. It's just one of those things that's sort of just coming out today, I believe. Apparently he engaged in some abusive behavior with his girlfriend at a recent film festival. That's kind of the end of the information I have there. There's not really a lot of specifics. I kind of feel weird even bringing it up when it's so new.
Right.
But it wasn't like, some unknown entertainment rag. It was a fairly well-known site, if I remember correctly, that actually it was MSN.com that I saw the story on. So man, talk about a guy who's had some missteps in his career, both role choices and professionally and personal life and his tax issues, and man, to get back in the spotlight and have this happen, no bueno.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the worst timing possible for him. I mean, and obviously, it's if it happened, it's terrible. And we don't want to just gloss over the fact that somebody was, physically assaulted in this situation. But I mean, just talking about it from the Hollywood side of it, it's here's a guy like you said that had found a way to work his way back into a film that was attracting some attention and, getting some really positive buzz from critics, and to just go and make a spectacle of himself again and sabotage all that. That's so Nic Cage.
Yes, very much so. The only other detail I guess that I left out of that was that the only other thing she reported apparently is that he was severely intoxicated at the time of the abuse, which is, no surprise. There's some domestic abuse going on. Seems like a lot of the time there's alcohol involved. So, well, I don't know if it's alcohol, but he was intoxicated in some way.
Do you know if charges were filed?
I do not know that.
Yeah.
So just another unfortunate, apparently almost a weekly occurrence here. And it's kind of disappointing because I know that there's been at least some talk about Oscar buzz for him and Mandy. I don't think there's any chance that's going to happen, but it kind of would have been fun to see him come back up and be in the public eye doing the film festival tours, which he clearly is still doing.
Right.
And, leading up to award season, because even if he doesn't end up getting nominated for an Oscar, I figure he'll work his way into at least a couple of the off awards.
Sure.
So it would have been kind of fun to see him come back. But like even the picture they used from him attending the film festival, he's wearing like this kick-ass like movie star leather jacket and like this anime Japanese writing t-shirt under it and like just the biggest like F.U. rock star shades you've ever seen. Like they look like they've been spray painted black. I mean, it's like the Nic Cage of old is back. So he may have robbed us all of a chance to see him sort of rise back to prominence because he lost his shit a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like he might have been just as surprised as everyone else that there he was being successful again and didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of alcohol issues, do you want to speak a little bit about our old friend Ben Affleck?
Yeah, as a perfect segue into that. So it sounds like Nic Cage might be announcing his entry into rehab here in a little bit. And today, Ben Affleck released his official statement noting that he had finished his 40-day stint in rehab and was feeling great and was back out in the real world again. And he just put a little statement out, apologizing and, thanking everybody who was supportive of him for standing behind him while he, dealt once again with his abuse problems, which I think all stem from alcohol. Mm-hmm. This was, it was good to see that he was back out of rehab. Rumors have also been kind of swirling that people have spotted him going back to the gym and hitting the workout circuit pretty hard, which is, of course, people see that and their very first thought is, I wonder if he's training to try to reprise the role of Batman again. Yep. It's worth kind of going back in time for a minute and reminding people that, at one point he was slated to write, direct, and star in a standalone Batman movie. And,
called the Batman, right?
Yeah, it was called The Batman. And a couple things went wrong there. One was his gangster movie, Live for Night or Live by Night, something like that, came and went. It was not received well, and I think that dented his relationship with the studio a little bit. Maybe put the brakes on that Batman development. And right about that time, the stories of him being drunk started showing up again, and it wasn't long after that he, by mutual agreement with the studio, walked away from the Batman production and went into rehab. Looking back, it's not hard to read between the lines and say that he was probably fired from the project. And, maybe one of the conditions of continuing a relationship with the studio was that he go into rehab. Regardless, in that time, another director was found. That director started working on the film. The Batman, that's Matt Reeves. He's slotted now to be the director of it. And based on what everyone is reporting from what he's had to say and what he's shown of what he's done so far on the new script, the Batman character is a much younger person than what we've seen in the current DC movies, which would imply that it's not going to be Ben Affleck. He's going to be recast. But, with him showing up in the gym, working out, he might be planning to try to piece together a compelling argument to keep playing that role. I mean, it would make sense. Like that's an awesome cash cow for him.
Yeah.
Career-wise, and he's actually doing a pretty good job with that role.
I was going to say, damn it, as much as we bag on the DC movies, he was maybe the best part of those movies.
Yeah.
As Batman.
I mean, he did something that is absolutely shocking to me, which is he found a fresh take on this character that we've seen portrayed numerous times by numerous actors.
Yeah.
And
and considering the material he had to work with, I think he did as well as he could.
Yeah, and the directors he was working with.
Vengeful, murderous Batman.
Yeah.
he just did what he could.
Yeah.
And gun shooting and killing Batman. Strange choices. Have you seen some of the other rumored cast members from that movie?
Yes, I have. I know that Kit Harington from Game of Thrones is a name that's been tossed around a little bit.
Yeah.
Kit Harington, yes. And I want to say just recently John Hamm maybe stepped up and waved a flag that he would want to.
Yeah, John Hamm stood up and said he wanted to be Batman, but you and I can do that too.
Well, yes. And I mean, definitely if they're taking it in, a younger direction, I don't think John Hamm is your choice.
I can't think of any direction other than comedy where that would be a good choice. I mean, I don't dislike John Hamm, but no.
Yeah.
Am I alone in that?
No, not at all.
A couple of the other roles that I think are interesting, and these are just rumors at this point, but I've seen Jeremy Irons' name tossed around for Alfred.
Okay.
And J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon. He seems like he'd make a good Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, but hold on, didn't he already play? Wait, didn't he already play Commissioner Gordon?
Did he? I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like he was in some superhero movie besides the Spider-Man movies.
J.K. Simmons?
Yeah.
I'm just going to think real hard / look online real quick.
Okay, yeah.
To try and confirm this.
My Swiss cheese memory is flagging me that like maybe in that recent Justice League movie he actually showed up as Commissioner Gordon?
If it is, it's not in his credits.
Man, okay.
So, yeah. Interesting. That was an unexpected turn that discussion took. But.
Yes, I'm just going to assume that I predicted that he would play Commissioner Gordon, and I have a memory of that original prediction.
Yeah, I think the thought of John Hamm as Batman scrambled your brain a little bit.
Yeah. You know what? Let's just move off the whole topic of Batman.
Good call.
So Ben Affleck releases a statement saying that he's back, and Chris Evans, who is currently playing Captain America for the Marvel Universe, sends out a little tweet that heavily implies that he's done. Yep. On the one hand, he is done. He tweeted out that he officially wrapped on shooting the last bits of the Avengers Part 4, Infinity War Part 2, and, was really thankful for it, said he was emotional about the whole thing and, wanted to thank everyone that he worked with and the fans, blah, blah, blah. But sort of the way he phrased it, sort of the words he used, like really, really suggested that he was like done. Not just done filming this particular movie, but maybe done with the role altogether, which ties into, some rumors that were swirling, I guess a few years ago when he said that he was ready to maybe not play Captain America and wanted to focus on doing other things like directing or whatever. I want to say that his contract had run out at the end of Avengers, whatever the second Avengers movie was.
Age of Ultron?
Yeah, Age of Ultron. And Marvel Studios went to him and said that, that there's too much for them to try to wedge in to just end his character in that film. And so they asked him to come back and do a couple more films. So he re-upped his contract. And I believe that was just for the 2 additional Avenger films. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if this next film sort of wraps up that character and allows him to move on, or leaves it open-ended and this tweet is just being misinterpreted, or possibly, as we've discussed in the past, this could just be a negotiation thing. And
I think with Evans, it's been established for a while that he wasn't going to go beyond his contract because it was a combination of, like you said, he wants to direct, and he was very vocal about missing out with time with his family. I don't know what his family situation is. I assume he has a handful of kids, so
yeah, I don't know.
He's mentioned that he's missing out on that. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see him make it official like that. Of course, the big question, and I don't know the answer to this, and if you know the answer to this, I don't want you to say it because I have no idea, because I don't know the comics well enough. But there's obviously all kinds of speculation as to whether he's going to kick it in the next Avengers movie. I have no idea if that's the case or not.
Right.
But that would be. I can think of several people I know in real life that will just turn into a blubbering mess if that happens.
Well, I mean, I would count myself as one of them almost. I mean, I think of the actors that have been cast in superheroes in the current crop of them. He is one of the absolute best at playing the role that he's been given.
And kind of came out of nowhere. Like, I had no expectations for the first Captain America movie when it came out.
I was kind of dreading it because the previous to that, we had seen him in those terrible Fantastic Four live-action films.
Yeah.
And
I don't even think I saw those. I saw the first one, but that was it.
Yeah, they were so bad. But anyway, he plays Johnny Storm in those. That was kind of the bar that I had sort of just accepted as what we were going to get from him. So when he showed up in that first Captain America movie and was terrific, I was just like, wow.
And I think, it's hard to put legend status on a character or a specific role that an actor plays when it's happening in real time. But I think many years from now, he'll have sort of legendary iconic status for his roles as Captain America in these films.
I would agree. And, he's still young enough that he could play this character for years and years and years to come if he wanted to.
He was in Snowpiercer. Do you remember Snowpiercer?
Babies taste best.
That was the line.
Yeah.
If I ever am fortunate enough to meet Chris Evans, I will bypass all the Captain America stuff and go straight to Babies Taste Best. If you don't know what I'm talking about, rent a little movie, find a little movie called Snowpiercer, and watch it at least until that line.
The crazy thing is that movie has a huge cult following.
It does, yeah. And I was excited to see it, and but it has that line.
Yeah.
It's the greatest gift from that movie.
And it's kind of funny because I don't think anyone would even have ever seen that movie or even known that it existed if it wasn't for the fact that Chris Evans signed on to star in it.
Yeah, I don't remember the timeline where it happened with all his other roles. Like but so he was already of note when that came out. Then.
Yeah, that's post Captain America.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, release date. It could be one of the situations where they shot that film and it's set on a shelf for a little while. Yeah, waiting for him to become a big star, and then they released it. Yeah, if you guys have ever noticed that sometimes an actor goes from being nobody at all to being kind of a big deal, and as soon as they do, suddenly there's like 5 or 6 movies that all come out in the next year or two, and you're like, where did all those come from? Mm-hmm. It's because there's a little game that gets played once in a while where if there's a sense that an actor has hot potential, they'll get him cheap, shoot some, not great low budget films, and then they don't release them. They just sort of sit on them, waiting for that actor to actually strike gold.
And then you say, why would this guy do this movie? And why does he look 4 years younger?
Yeah. I mean, cast your mind back. We were just talking about Ben Affleck. The same thing happened with Ben Affleck, All right. One more interesting piece of news that I think is worth commenting on, just because in the past we discussed the whole Movie Pass fiasco, how that all played out. AMC theaters, they have their own subscription movie-going service, which is kind of like Movie Pass, wherein you pay $19.95 a month, and it gives you, I want to say, access to 3 movies a week. And I believe there is no limitation on what those movies can be. So you can go see the hot release movies or whatever. Anyway, it's only 3 months old, right? So they launched it about the same time that Movie Pass decided to just cut their own throats. And in that time, they've managed to rack up 400,000 subscribers. Now, this is significant because when they launched their service, they told everyone that their goal was to get 500,000 subscribers by the end of the year, or within 1 year of launching. So they're already almost to that target goal in just 3 months.
Yeah,
this is
obviously,
this is going to work out really, really well for them, it seems. So I just thought it was worth bringing up since we've discussed another service that did it all wrong.
Did you want to dovetail this into some financial advice? Since we do this every week now, maybe?
I'm going to take a pass on that.
Yeah, you check your own AMC stock ticker, okay? All right, yeah, that's interesting. Even as a guy who loves going to the movies, I still can't seem to want to bring myself to pull the trigger on a service like that. I guess it's a seasonal thing. There's certain times of the year where that would be at a tremendous value, and then certain times of the year where not so much.
And I mean, it also depends on, are you nearby to that particular theater chain?
Yeah.
The deal with Movie Pass was they had worked deals out with a lot of movie theater chains. So it kind of made it universally appealing. With AMC, I mean, if your local theater that you like to go to is AMC, then, I mean, it seems like a really sweet deal.
Yeah.
If it's not, I mean,
if you're anywhere, if you live anywhere near a major city, you're probably good to go there.
Okay, yeah, I don't really know. I know a lot of the big theater chains are sort of regional.
Okay, well, I could be wrong there. I was just pulling out of the air. I have no idea, which is why you
sure
should
you're
never
right.
listen to me.
I'm sure you're right, and I think you're right. Yes, people should invest in this.
Oh, God. All right. Coming in the next segment, we will talk about some development news, including a really tired actor that I kind of thought was finished, but I guess he isn't. Anyway, more details coming up. This week in development news, as you might expect, there are a plethora of there's a constant pipeline of remakes and reboots out there. So they're rebooting Hellboy. Hellboy, of course, was brought to the screen pretty well, I think, by Guillermo del Toro several years back, starring Ron Perlman, noted character actor who they suddenly thrust into a leading role. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're sort of going for that again now with David Harbour, I believe his name is, kind of a side character actor. Certainly not as famous as Ron Perlman was at the time for his character roles, but he's most known for Stranger Things. And he will star as Hellboy in this reboot directed by Neil Marshall, who directed, I think, most famously Dog Soldiers way back in the early 2000s. Oh, okay. The Descent is probably his most famous film. I would say so. That was a beloved horror film,
right?
Which I liked.
I do too. I bring it up frequently when talking about horror movies.
Yeah, and neither one of us are like massive horror fans, but that was definitely a good one, and kind of came out around that time where horror movies suddenly like started gaining in popularity again.
Yeah.
So he directed that. Again, Dog Soldiers, I think, was his directorial debut for a feature-length film, which did pretty well. And then he went on to direct several different TV series, actually a couple of good ones. He directed some episodes of Black Sails for Starz.
That's a good-looking show.
Yeah. And he has directed a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones, nice. Which doesn't need any additional discussion. He also directed some episodes of, or at least one episode of Westworld, which is pretty beautifully shot, but it's as HBO shows go, it's a pretty good one. Anyway, so odd casting decision, do you think?
Yeah. So just to be clear, the guy from Stranger Things that we're talking about is the sheriff,
the hat guy.
Yeah, the hat guy. Which, I mean, yeah, like I would give anything to know how that came about. Like he had to have read for that part, right? I mean, they didn't just cast him based off of Stranger Things. So I'd love to see the screen test. I'd love to see the footage of him being Hellboy, because like visually, my brain can't make that connection. I don't make that leap. In the case of Ron Perlman, it made sense because he was a guy who is famous for playing heavy makeup characters. I mean, like that's like you look at his filmography, and that's almost exclusively what he did for the first 20 years of his career. So it makes sense that if you're going to if you need a good actor who's also willing to sit in a makeup chair for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening after shooting for 16-hour days, you go with Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
But so yeah, this is an interesting casting decision for sure.
Plus Perlman just has that, he's got that massive head. He was, like you said, just a little bit of ingenuity on the makeup, and I'm not trying to, Mr. Perlman, I know you're not listening, but it wasn't too much of a stretch. You can see it without the makeup. You can see, oh yeah, just with the horns and the red, and yeah, this will work out nicely. Yeah. And he just had that sort of attitude. So it is a weird decision. And this is one of those remakes where reboots where I don't feel like there was a thirst for this.
Yeah,
I like the Hellboy movies fine. I don't think I actually ever saw the second one. I enjoyed the first one a lot. But I mean, even as someone who likes genre films and comic book movies and sci-fi and all that, I had no desire for Hellboy to be remade.
Yeah.
So that it seems like an odd choice. It seems like odd casting. I'm sure I'll see it.
Well, I was going to say, the oddness is what's appealing to me. I mean, based on that casting decision and that director put those two together, I'll go see it for sure.
Mila Jovovich is in the movie.
Okay, changed my mind. I'm going to take a hard pass on this one.
Well, I have another one that that you're probably not going to like.
What? It keeps going?
I actually like this actor, but you've never been a fan. Ian McShane, which you've so famously referred to as. Go ahead. You don't remember?
Was it cheap ass Al Pacino?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I stand by that.
Yeah. Also Daniel Day Kim, who I think was most famous for his role in Lost. So I don't know what kind of budget they're working with here. It's just there's a lot of weird, but like Terrence said, that could be an appealing part of it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Let's just be honest. It sounds like it's all low budget. Like those are all actors that I would expect to pop up in low budget movies. That's a director who has kind of made his name in the film world working on basically low budget films. Obviously, his television work has probably bumped him up to an A-list level thing. So it's just curious. Everything about that is interesting. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on this.
Yeah, it seems like one of those kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if they said this is being made for Netflix or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it kind of has that kind of feel to it. All right. So another remake, I'm sorry, not a remake, a sequel, Rambo is coming back. Rambo Part 5 is actually going to happen, and yes, it is going to involve Sylvester Stallone. He is listed at the time, for now anyway, as a co-director on this movie. There are no other cast members announced. It's very early on. There's not really anything about the story, but I mean, this I think is this is enough information to at least talk about for a minute. Stallone, this guy, strange career. He was that sort of American dream actor, just came up from nowhere. He wrote Rocky,
yep.
And it won. Did it win Best Picture? I'm blanking now. I thought it did. Yeah. Rocky, but anyway, it was a huge hit when it came out. It was very popular, critically acclaimed. Obviously, it had all the big sequels. He went on to do other big franchise movies and became a huge action star. And then, when the time came for his career to start sort of waning, it did for a while. And then he came roaring back with a brand new franchise, The Expendables, which I don't know is up to 3 or 4 or 5 movies now, a couple of which are actually pretty damn entertaining.
Yes.
He sort of got on that train of like, let's embrace the fact that we're older. We'll just cast a bunch of old aging action stars and kind of make that part of the joke. Because I was not enthused about those movies when they came out, but I actually ended up enjoying it. And Rambo: First Blood, I really like that movie. It's got that sort of low budget feel to it. Brian Dennehy, I thought, played a really underrated villain in that movie.
Yep. Screenplay by James Cameron.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That had completely escaped me. So there you go. That's an interesting piece of trivia I did not know. So yeah, I mean, I liked Rambo. The sequels were the sequels. Yes. What you expect when they take a good movie and ruin it with some bad sequels.
Did you ever even see the fourth one?
No.
Which I believe was just called Rambo.
I'm sure I did not.
Yeah, I did not either.
Yeah. Now, as far as I know, they haven't yet announced that this is going to be like, current Rambo and young Rambo, like they're doing with that horrible Die Hard sequel.
Right.
I'm just really hoping that doesn't happen. I will say one thing about this co-director, Adam. I'm already blanking on his name. Adam Grunberg. He doesn't have any other directing credits so far, except for one episode of a TV show and one movie that he did, which obviously his directorial debut in 2012. I've actually seen this movie. It's called Get the Gringo, and that was I told you about this a long time ago.
The Mel Gibson
right? Movie where he's like in this. I think it was a Mexican prison,
right? Yeah.
And that movie, I don't know if you ever bothered to watch it,
I did not.
But man, that movie did a great job of establishing how scary that situation is, and it was actually a pretty entertaining movie. And Mel Gibson kind of came back for a little bit in my head, and man, I'm enjoying Mel Gibson again.
Nice.
Where he did a bunch of those types of movies for a while there. So that actually I thought was a pretty decent little flick, fun anyway. But he apparently is going to co-direct with Stallone, which co-directing with Sylvester Stallone must be joyous.
Yeah, that's an interesting combination there. They should just nip that in the bud right now, and just Stallone can write the screenplay and he can star in it, but just hand that over to a director.
According to IMDb, it's currently filming, so it's not just talk at this point.
Well, Stallone, man, he's really found a way to bring new life into his core characters. Like these Creed films. Creed 2 is coming out again soon, and that's an example of where they sort of figured out a way to pass the torch for him. He's still in them playing Rocky, but it's actually the son of Apollo Creed is the main character in these films, which is kind of a great concept, as a way to keep that franchise moving forward. And I mean, here he is still making Rambo movies. As hard to believe as that is, you gotta take your hat off to that.
Absolutely, for sure. Did you actually end up seeing Creed?
I did not know.
I saw it. It didn't quite meet up to the hype for me, but it was a solid little movie.
Excellent. Well,
yeah.
I did double check, and you're right. Rocky did win Best Picture.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Along with Best Director and Best Film Editing.
Wow. Yeah. So one of those guys who just burst on the scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about a cultural icon in America. I mean,
yes,
it's tough to pick something because there's a bazillion different cultural icons, but there's few that are so also identify closely with America and the American spirit as Rocky, and also sort of Stallone for the way that he just kind of came up out of nowhere and did this.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting. All right. So coming up next, we're going to talk about Bradley Cooper.
In light of the new movie coming out this weekend, A Star is Born, we thought it might be kind of interesting to take a look back at the star, Bradley Cooper. Kind of discuss where he came from, what he's done, where he is in his career now, and what we think of what he's doing now, branching out into directing, and also working as a screenwriter on the new film A Star is Born. Bradley, he's a guy that I would say, like most people, I became aware of with the release of The Hangover. He had been in things previously. He wasn't like a complete unknown. He had shown up in some movies.
Wedding Crashers.
Yeah, Wedding Crashers specifically. But the thing that I think really caught everyone's attention in The Hangover was here was a guy who was very, very handsome, who looked like he should be a leading man, who was doing an unbelievably good job being funny and also just being one of the guys.
Yeah.
He looked like he should be the star of that film, but he wasn't the star of that film. And that got a lot of people's attention. I know it got my attention. And, that movie was a huge, huge hit. And, his career just went crazy at that point, from strength to strength.
Yeah. I do remember him from Wedding Crashers as playing the dude bro jerk older brother. But for sure, The Hangover was his big breakout role. And yeah, it's just not really fair for a guy to be that good looking and also that talented comedically. And he definitely isn't just another one of these, pretty boy kind of actors. I think even after The Hangover, you could kind of see, okay, this guy is not going to be one of these fly by night, disappear into the ether kind of guys. And it turns out that, with A Star is Born, we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on in the trailer segment, but it turns out that, the guy's got aspirations to direct. That's his directorial debut. He's starting at it pretty young. He's not waiting until he's an older actor. He wants to get behind the camera, and we'll save our thoughts on that trailer for then. But he looks like he's setting himself up for some big success behind the camera as well.
Yeah, and he's been a guy who's been able to kind of walk that line and do things that are respected as actors. Like award-winning and award-nominated films. I think probably most famously American Sniper. From 2014, that Clint Eastwood film, which, he's amazing in. And we can talk about that more here in a minute. But, that is in contrast to also the fact that he's part of the hugely successful Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, where he's just the voice. Like, he's not even on screen. Like, you've got this incredibly good-looking guy, and he's just doing the voice of a talking raccoon, and it's amazing.
He's got a very interesting filmography in that he's hitting several genres, comedy, drama, like really like gut-wrenching dramas are in there, like American Sniper and A Place Beyond the Pines. The comedies like we talked about, Wedding Crashers, The Hangover, and he's got his, like you said, he's got his big sci-fi franchise and Guardians of the Galaxy. He's got his sports movie. Silver Linings Playbook was sort of disguised as a sports movie to bring in like the sports fans, but it's not at all really a sports movie. It's kind of a tragic rom-com, I guess. Well, tragic's not the right word, but it's more of a romantic comedy, which I thought he had great chemistry in that with Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's done a couple of sci-fi movies as well besides Guardians of the Galaxy. He did that. I never actually saw the movie, but he did that movie Limitless, where he plays the guy who, I don't know if it's like he takes a pill or something and he becomes super smart.
Which they then spun off into a TV series,
right, which I also didn't see.
Noteworthy because Cooper was not only a producer on that TV series, but he actually appeared reprising his role from the film in the series, which was unusual because, this was when his career was like really, really starting to click and, move to the next gear. And in that situation, most movie stars don't really want to step down and, slum it on television, but he had no problem doing that.
Yeah. And just since we're kind of jumping around, I'll say with American Sniper, he surprised me because, we'd seen his career to that point. And it wasn't one of those things, I think, where we were like, oh, this guy doesn't have the chops for this. It was just like, I don't know, he might be a little bit out of his, out of his range for this. We'll just have to see. And I mean, credit to him and credit to Clint Eastwood. Got a great performance out of him. I thought he brought a lot of subtlety to a role that could have kind of gone over the top a little bit, because not to get into politics or anything with this, but we sort of know Clint Eastwood's stance on things, and he Clint Eastwood was pretty clear about how he felt about a lot of the things that swirled around the whole story of Chris Kyle and the American Sniper story. So I think with obviously having to do the movie the way that Clint Eastwood wanted it to be done, I thought Bradley did a pretty great job in that movie, actually, of pulling off that role with a little bit more subtlety than I expected. Yeah,
and I mean, whether this is fair or not, let me just throw out the obvious comparison for me is that movie came out just a few years after Lone Survivor. Lone Survivor starred Mark Wahlberg.
Yep.
And I think it's an interesting contrast to see how those two actors approach their two roles. And I mean, I don't think there's any question that, with Lone Survivor, you see Mark Wahlberg in a film playing a role. In American Sniper, I mean, Bradley Cooper, like he's one of those actors that transforms himself.
Yeah.
And actually the thing that I like most about his acting and that I really want to bring attention to is he is the actor currently, the only one that I know who does this certainly as well as he does it, which is he changes his voice for every role that he plays. The way he speaks, not just adding an accent, I mean, a lot of them do that well. Christian Bale does that extraordinarily well. But Bradley Cooper, his whole cadence changes. Yep. It's a really extraordinary transformation to see him go through. You compare the way he sounds in American Sniper to the way he sounds in the trailer for A Star Is Born, and versus just the way he speaks normally. And if you had no visual to put it with, you would think that was three completely different people. And it's a really extraordinary talent that he's got. I once saw him where he had this random kind of quote that he had always wanted to be an actor. And as he was growing up and thinking about being an actor, he thought to himself, I've got 5 or 6 voices in me. And in that interview where he says that, he says, kind of make of that what you will. But to me, that made perfect sense, because I really feel like he might be one of those actors that when he's cast in a role, what he does to find that character is to first find the voice of that character. I just think it's extraordinary. I can't think of another actor that does it nearly as well as he does.
And he's another one. He's an actor that does a great job of getting something across without saying anything.
Yes.
With a look. I mean, there's one of the scenes, and I don't remember if it was one of the more celebrated scenes from American Sniper, but there's the scene where he's getting an oil change, and I think he's got his kid with him, and someone recognizes him, and I mean, he just absolutely nails that reaction so well, and it felt so real to me.
Right.
The way that he reacted to that person recognizing him and talking to him, and it just, man, he just does a great job at it, and that's not really a skill that all actors have, believe it or not. They're all taught that.
Sure.
I'm sure it's one of the things that they're all taught, but they don't always do it as well as they should. And I think the fact that he has Clint Eastwood as his director there, who obviously he's an actor who became a director. Well, he's been doing both for so long that he's equally known as both now, I think.
Yeah.
And that they had a great synergy on set. So I look forward to them working together again in the future, which I think they do. We'll talk about that in the trailer section as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another little moment or I don't know, just detail of American Sniper that really stood out to me. And I don't know if credit to this goes to Clint Eastwood as the director or Bradley Cooper, but he's playing this obviously Marine sniper, and there's a scene of him on his deployment working out the way soldiers on deployment work out, and he's got his shirt off or whatever doing it. And typically when you see an actor with their shirt off, obviously it's the culmination of weeks and weeks and weeks at the gym with a personal trainer, and they're just cut and they're just as perfect as they can be. His physique, he's huge. Like, he clearly bulked up for the movie. It might have been the first role where he actually put on 20, 25 pounds of muscle. Mm-hmm. So he's huge, but it's not that chiseled actor look. It's exactly what you would expect guys who are spending most of their time bored on deployment, and they're just working out to kill time.
Right.
That physique is the physique that this character has. And I just thought that was such a great little touch. That again, I've already mentioned Christian Bale once before, but that's the kind of thing that Christian Bale loves to do in his roles. Mm-hmm. That physical transformation, not just, to be out of shape versus to be in shape, but to be different kinds of out of shape or different kinds of in shape. Those two are probably the two actors that are doing the most of that right now. It's kind of something that I think maybe Robert De Niro pioneered in the 70s, where he would just change the look of his body for one role to another. And it's I don't know. I've already probably talked about that point longer than it really deserves.
I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so obviously I guess the point that we're getting to is undeniably a very, very talented actor. And a talented actor who's just, at the pinnacle of his career right now. Like, he's hitting on all cylinders. So it's a little bit interesting maybe that he's choosing now to make his directorial debut. Mm-hmm. Most actors tend to wait. They sort of do that when the leading man roles are no longer coming anymore,
right.
But no, he's going for it right now when he's got the most juice behind him. And I think the buzz for A Star Is Born is pretty good.
Yeah, and I think it's legit. And stick around, obviously, for the trailer segment. We're going to talk about the Star Is Born trailer coming up in a minute here. So he's a guy I think that could have easily been typecast as the pretty funny friend or whatever, but he's done a great job with his role selection and his representation. I guess plays a role in that too to help him pick the right roles. And that's sort of an underrated thing too. I think that a lot of actors don't get that their role choices are so important. Like, if you want to make the most money, you can go down this path. But if you want to have a long extended career, have the respect of your peers, if you're chasing statues, that kind of thing, he's done a great job of varying his roles up and his genres. And he just doesn't. He seems like he's fearless in his role choice. He's willing to give anything a shot. Yeah, and even playing Rocket the raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That's a bold choice too, because as we were saying, he's known kind of for his looks, right or wrong, and here's a role where they're like, hey, you're never going to be seen on the screen, mm-hmm. you're just a voice, and he kills it. He absolutely kills it. And it even goes back a little bit to his roots, because clearly there's a lot of humor in those films all around, but I think the Rocket character brings the heaviest dose of humor to those films, while also being poignant at the same time. God damn it, but in that first movie, there's a moment where you actually feel your heart being tugged at by this cartoon raccoon in the movie. I'll be honest too, when I first started seeing the trailers for the first Guardians movie, I was not at all enthused about talking raccoon character.
Yeah, nobody was.
Oh man, I was just like, really, this feels like a George Lucas kind of thing. We're gonna put a talking raccoon in this. And Bradley Cooper just absolutely kills it. And like you said, now you're like feeling things for this little talking rat. Yeah, absolutely. He's just one of those actors that no matter what he makes, I'm going to be interested in seeing it. Yeah. And I love the fact that he's like you said, he's trying to cover as broad a canvas as he can, thrillers, comedies, dramas. He's just trying to do as much as he can. He even had an emotional impact scene at the end of Infinity War when things happen at the end of that movie, and Groot gets what he gets.
Oh my God, yes, you're
and
right.
He has that little moment, and even that he does well. The combination of those damn animators and Bradley Cooper's voice work was just so good in that moment.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, he's got a new movie coming up, A Star is Born, and I think we're going to discuss the trailer to it when we come back from this break.
Trailer segment, everybody's favorite. We have 4 movies for you this week. We're going to start off with Vice, which is directed by Adam McKay. Adam McKay, if you don't recognize director names too well, you'll definitely recognize some of his filmography. He did Talladega Nights. He's basically his producing and creative buddy is Will Ferrell. So Talladega Nights, Anchorman, Step Brothers. He did He did some episodes of Eastbound and Down from HBO. He sort of runs in that circle of actors that
and all of this is misleading.
And then, but also he also directed The Big Short a few years ago, which was Oscar. And he actually, I think he won an award for best. He won an Oscar for that movie in some capacity.
Okay.
So he directed this movie called Vice. It appears to be about it's about Dick Cheney. When I say appears to, I'm not entirely clear from the trailer. It's cast like a comedy, and it sort of looks like a comedy.
Yeah, the trailer feels a lot more comedy than I think it's intending to.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't remember, Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States under George W. Bush.
W.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in this movie, W is played by Sam Rockwell.
Yeah. Let's just hover on that for a moment. Because there's a lot of makeup in this movie, but there's no makeup for Sam Rockwell as George W. Bush.
Yeah, I was watching it first thinking, did Christian Bale gain 50 pounds for this role? And then when they pulled out, I was like, oh no, he's wearing a fat suit.
Yeah.
But the uncanny thing about this is when this trailer was released this week, a still photo of Christian Bale as Dick Cheney hit the internet. And when I saw it, I didn't know it was Christian Bale. I didn't know who the guy was at all. And I thought to myself, for whatever big movie this is that's coming out, why are they using a still photo of this guy who I don't recognize at all? It turns out it was Christian Bale as Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
That completely knocked me on my ass.
Yeah, that ties into what we were saying earlier about Christian Bale being one of those actors that just transforms himself physically from one role to another. And it's worth watching this trailer, if for no other reason than just to see that he's done it once again. It's not just the makeup, which is impressive. But I mean, it's just his body language, the obviously the tone of voice, the way he speaks is all transformed. But he captures this thing that Cheney does, where Dick Cheney kind of has, like, he smiles with only half of his face, so his mouth is always kind of a little crooked, especially when he's sort of amused by something. And Bale captures that perfectly. Like, it's like a signature of that person, and it's kind of amazing to see Bale pick up on those sort of things.
Yeah, I wasn't real enthused by the trailer, but I'm kind of thinking about it will be one of those movies where the movie is like, but the performance will be, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to Sam Rockwell, it's also got Steve Carell in it.
Steve Carell plays Don Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense.
Also with a lot of makeup.
Interesting choices, very interesting choices. But he pretty much, Adam McKay gets the band together and recasts a lot of the same actors, and he does it again with Rumsfeld there from being played by Steve Carell. So, I don't know, this is probably one of those things where they're hoping it might be Oscar fodder because of the subject matter and because Christian Bale is one of those method actors. That trailer though, I wasn't really feeling it. So, we'll have to see. I'm interested to see it. I'm definitely interested to see it.
Yeah, I am too. It's also, when I first saw it, I had the thought, well, it's odd timing, like, with all of the political turmoil going on in the world, and then especially in the United States right now, like, why are we going back to this point? But then I kind of realized that it's so long ago now that it kind of makes sense.
Sure.
And then I just felt super old.
There's going to be a list of actors who played W. We got Josh Brolin, who played it in sort of a half comedic manner, half, maybe more than half. Rockwell clearly,
movie.
Yes, Rockwell clearly is going to do his W thing. I mean, it's like in another 20 years, how many actors will there be that have put an amusing spin on W?
Yeah, and just because of the nature of his personality, it's always going to be hard to tell if they're playing it for laughs or if they're really trying to play it straight.
Yeah. All right, another trailer this week. This one is called The Mule. This is Clint Eastwood's newest movie, and as you know, Clint Eastwood, I don't know how old he is now. He's old. But man, that guy just keeps going all the time. He's been directing movies since the 60s. It's ridiculous. Like, literally, how many decades is that? I'm really bad at math, but it's a lot of decades.
It's all of them. It's all the decades.
All the decades in the history of film. He's been directing movies. It's crazy. And acting. It's just... Clint Eastwood is an American icon, and he is directing this movie called The Mule, where he plays a drug mule at his age. Obviously, he's doing sort of a Walter White Breaking Bad thing where things have gone wrong in his life, and he's trying to leave some money for his family.
Yes.
And he gets mixed up with the wrong crew. He has Bradley Cooper in this movie, shows up, which is great. So they're working together again. And, you know, the subject matter, like the pitch of this movie is kind of ridiculous, but I'm kind of intrigued by it. I was actually sort of intrigued by it more than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I have been fooled so many times in that I will see the trailer for a Clint Eastwood movie and think I have no interest in that. And then I see the movie and I'm like, well, that was an amazing film. That finally, I've learned from that. And I just realized that I'm going to see this movie because it's probably going to be another amazing film from him.
So what specific, do you have any examples of what you're talking about that you thought the trailer didn't look good?
Off the top of my head, Gran Torino.
Okay. So you like that one?
Yeah. I did not like the trailer. I was just like, well, that just looks kind of, get off my lawn kind of a movie, and then you watch it and you just realize that there's, I felt there was just so much depth to the character that he was portraying. And, Clint Eastwood, he's so old now that he plays that old guy that you love despite their personalities so well that, it's always going to be a home run for him. And, the Mule definitely seems like he's trying to capture that again.
I just want to know what a regular day in his life is like at his age. Like, I'm sure I would just cry at what he does every day compared to what I do every day.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, he still seems to be just, as sharp as he ever was. I mean, there is no harder job in all of Hollywood than directing.
Yeah.
And here's this 90-year-old guy who's just, year after year, he just does it.
There's no way that he's worked it out to where when he directs a movie, he's only on set 4 hours a day. It doesn't work like that.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, just a few years ago, as we talked about earlier, he did American Sniper. So he was filming a war movie with heavy action sequences and, very unforgiving locations. And I mean,
I'm sure there's a brutal schedule.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm looking forward to that one more than I thought I would be once we started the trailer. All right, next one up is ROCKETMAN. This stars Taron, is it Taron? Yes. Taron Egerton, known from the Kingsman movies.
Yes. Where
he plays Elton John, another biopic sort of riffing off of, I guess the other one coming up soon, Bohemian Rhapsody. Starring Rami Malek, which I think we're both very excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that right now there's like two British rock stars from the 70s who have biopics coming out, essentially within a year of each other, if not, in fact, in the same year.
Yep.
That's just, I guess, an interesting coincidence. I don't really know for sure. And I'm curious to see both of them. I'm not a huge fan of Taron Egerton, to be honest with you. So it's going to be a tough sell for me to see this in the theater. It might be more of a rental situation or whatever. Whereas in the case of Bohemian Rhapsody, like you see it and you're just like, oh my God, that's them. Like this doesn't look like a biopic at all. This looks like a documentary of some sort. I did not have that same response to ROCKETMAN. The second you see Taron's face on the screen, like I was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot you could glean from the teaser / trailer, but it didn't really jump out at me. So I mean, who doesn't like Elton John? I like you said, I think that might fall into the rental category, but depending on when it ultimately comes out and what else is in theaters at the time, that might be worth checking out.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, not a lot of time on that one since it just didn't really resonate with either one of us. But last trailer of the night is A Star Is Born, which is being released this weekend. Stars Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, directed by Bradley Cooper. It is Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, and I just got to say that I've seen some of the TV spots and, looks intriguing, rock and roll story. But actually watching the trailer, I was kind of surprised at how good this movie looked. As far as it was a good looking trailer.
Yes.
And it looks like an interesting story. I mean, obviously it's a bit tried and true. Just real briefly, this is the third American remake of A Star Is Born. The original was released in 1937. And then it was adapted into a musical in the 50s that starred Judy Garland, and then it was remade, I think, most famously as a kind of a rock musical movie in 1976 that starred Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson. So,
which is the version that I was aware of.
Yeah. It was. I actually wasn't aware that it was a remake until I started reading into this, and then remembered. Strangely, I somehow knew that there was a Judy Garland version. That's probably more because of my wife, who's a big Judy Garland fan. Judy Garland fan.
Are you trying to say Judge Judy?
I'm just gonna stop talking.
Yeah. So interesting little twist in this version. Anyone listening to this, I'm sure, has been just inundated with the commercials for A Star Is Born. I mean, that the marketing for this movie has just been a tidal wave, an absolute tsunami for it. So I'm sure you're aware that basically the story breaks down to a country singer discovers this young woman with an incredible voice, and they go on tour together, fall in love. The one from the 70s starred Chris Christopherson, but he plays a rock star, versus the current one, which Bradley Cooper is actually playing a country star, whereas in reality, Chris Christopherson was a genuine country star. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And did we already mention Bette Midler in the 70s version is the young ingenue singer?
Barbra Streisand.
Yes. Is that right?
It's Barbra Streisand.
Okay.
I mean...
My mistake?
Yeah. Unless Wikipedia is wrong. Which it never is.
No, it never is. Until I go edit it real quick.
Yeah. So, I mean... I thought it was remarkable that it looks interestingly shot. It looks like it was shot with a lot of energy and vigor, and the colors and the way they set the shots
so polished. It looks so
for a first-time director. That's where hiring a good director of photography comes in.
That's absolutely right. So Bradley Cooper went out and got one of the best. He hired Matthew Libatek. I'm probably saying his name wrong.
Libatek.
He's done several movies that you've heard of and that you've probably enjoyed. Two interesting things are he is Darren Aronofsky's guy. So all of Darren's movies, this guy has been the DP on since the beginning.
That's interesting.
Since Pi, all the way up through Black Swan, The Fountain,
The Wrestler.
And, that unfortunate Noah movie that came out not too long ago.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah. But anyway,
I won't hold against him.
Whatever you want to say about Darren Aronofsky's films, the one thing that is indisputable is that they are gorgeously photographed films.
Sure.
And here, this DP is going to work his magic for Bradley Cooper. But in addition to that, the same weekend, this DP has another movie coming out, and that is Venom.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to have two mega movies coming out on the same weekend competing against each other, and they could not be more different in tone. They could not be more different in style. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to talk about just, a career-defining moment for this guy is everyone in Hollywood who knows anything about filmmaking has got to be kind of keeping an eye on this. I mean, how often does a DP get to show off their range of skills in two competing movies on the same weekend? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a weird coincidence that it turned out that way. And I mean, I guess Bradley Cooper, you got to give him credit for making such an informed decision on his director of photography, because I would assume that a lot of directors, when they're first-time directors, they want to have their vision on the screen. They want it to have a look that they want it to have. And Bradley was smart enough to say, all right, that's fine, but I'm going to filter it through this guy who has got a lot of great credits to his name, who's very talented. And I mean, I kind of like equate it to like a football coach knowing that he needs to hire a good defensive coordinator and a good offensive coordinator and not try to do everything himself.
Yeah.
And it looks like at least based on the trailers, that they've got some really good synergy together there. So
yeah, and if you'll indulge me, I just like to contrast it. A few weeks ago, I gave us a review for the movie Blaze, which is based on the tragic life of a country singer from Texas, and that movie was directed by Ethan Hawke. So it's another movie about a country singer that's directed by an actor, and it's interesting to compare those two movies in that with A Star Is Born, as we've said, it looks so polished and gorgeous, and in the case of Blaze, it's the exact opposite, which is to say it's such a raw, gritty look to that movie. It's super low budget. It's just, it's just as real as you can get, dust in the air, dirt on the walls, light flares on the camera. Just two very, very different takes on kind of a similar, topic for a story that, just came out, within a month or two from each other. It would be fun for people who might have an interest in it to maybe watch those movies back to back and just sort of see how two actors tackle them in two different ways.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison, and I'm really excited to see what this does for Bradley Cooper going forward, because if the movie is as good as the trailer makes it look, he's going to enter a whole new stratosphere.
Yeah.
And he'll be having to make a decision whether he wants to continue as an actor or a director or just continue to do both.
Every once in a while, though, there's one of those weird situations where an actor directs a film, knocks it out of the park, and then disappears.
Yep.
And, I that's maybe the most baffling thing for me of them all. I guess maybe because directing is so hard that they're like, oh, F this. I don't want to keep doing this, but
it's just so much easier to show up on set for your 4 hours in the, as an actor.
You're right.
Kick it in the trailer afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just another, going back to the director of photography, Matthew Libatique. He also shot Iron Man.
Oh, hey.
The number, to me, still the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie out there. And so Bradley definitely was pulling some talent for this, which looks like a great choice. So I kind of went from seeing the TV spots, being sort of mildly interested in seeing this, and then when I found out it was Bradley Cooper's directorial debut, I got a lot more interested in seeing it. And then after watching the trailer, I'm actually actively excited to see it now.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way.
So I don't think I'm rolling the dice by saying in the future we will have a conversation about the actual movie itself at some point very, very soon.
Now that is an investment you can count on.
That's right. All right, I think that's all we have for this week. We will do it again next week. Hopefully we'll maybe have a reaction to A Star Is Born. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys get the chance, you go out and see a movie this weekend, all right?
All right. You guys take it easy. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.